Hi, in this example, I'm going to talk about what it means for two events to be independent. Two events are said to be independent if the occurrence of one event does not affect the probability of the other event. So I'm going to go ahead and show you two examples. One example is going to be with replacement, and the other example is going to be without replacement. So let's say we have an event H, and the event is picking a heart, and then we're going to let event A be event of picking a spade. If we want to pick two cards, one card at a time, and the first card I pick, what is the probability it is a heart? I put the card back, I shuffle it in the deck of cards, and then I pick another card, and what is the probability that the card is a spade? So here is a deck of cards in case you're not sure what hearts and spades are. And you can see from the deck that we have on the top row, there are 13 hearts right here. And we also have on the bottom row, there are 13 spades. So figuring out the probability of picking a heart is pretty simple. Our standard deck has 52 cards. So in this whole sample space, we are talking about 52 cards. So let's look at the example. First example I want to show you is what happens if we pick a card, we put the card back. That means with replacement. So what is the probability of picking a card that is a heart, putting the card back, replacing it, and then picking a second card, and that card is a spade? The probability of picking a heart is simply just 13 out of 52. If I put the card back, in other words, what is the probability I pick a spade? Well, that doesn't change because I still have 52 cards and there are 13 spades, so it would be 13 out of 52. Now, to show independence, we can show that mathematically. For example, if two events are independent, that means right here, the symbol is a probability we pick a spade given we already picked a heart. So if we already picked a heart, what is the probability of picking a spade? If the probability of picking a spade doesn't change, then those two events are said to be independent. Probability of picking a spade stays the same. In other words, the probability of picking a spade given we already picked a heart is going to be 13 out of 52, which equals the probability of picking a spade, which is 13 out of 52. In other words, if we look at the general multiplication rule, the general multiplication rule says that the probability of picking a spade and a heart is equal to, since we picked a heart first, we're going to say the probability of picking a heart times the probability of picking a spade given we picked a heart. Looking at the general multiplication rule, if we can show independence, that means that the probability of picking a spade and a heart is simply going to equal the probability of picking a heart times the probability of picking a spade. So we can see right here that these two are equal to one another. Therefore, I can substitute the probability of picking a spade given we picked a heart by the probability of picking a spade, since the event of picking a heart does not affect the probability of picking a spade since we put the card back. This shows mathematically that the two events are independent. Now, what happens if we do not replace the card? In other words, our first card we picked is a heart. We hold on to it, and now what is the probability of picking a spade? So if we look now at the same situation without replacement, in other words, we already picked a heart and we do not put the card back, what is the probability of picking a second card and it is a spade? Now keep in mind that we started off with a deck of 52 cards. If I take one card and I do not replace it, I now have 51 cards in my total sample space. So in other words, the probability of picking a spade given we picked a heart now becomes 13 out of 51. Well, if we look at the probability of picking a spade in general, that would be 13 out of 52. Well, 13 out of 51 does not equal 13 out of 52. Therefore, we cannot say that the two events are independent. The probability of picking a spade given we picked a heart changes if we have already picked a heart. So therefore, the two events are not independent.